So, how can one single short story about a pretty lonely clerk and his quest for a new coat end up changing the entire course of literature? That's the huge question we're tackling today as we unravel the massive legacy of Nikolai Gogol's 1842 masterpiece, The Overcoat. You've probably heard this famous line before, right? It's usually credited to the great Fyodor Dostoevsky. And it suggests that this one story is basically the ancestor of all the great Russian literature that came after it. But what does that really mean? What's going on in this story that could possibly give birth to so much? Let's unpack it. Okay, so to really understand the Overcoat, we first have to meet the man at the very center of it all, Akaki Akakiyevich. And his arrival in literature? Well, it was nothing short of a revolution. See, before Gogol, literature was mostly concerned with the big shots, heroes, kings, epic figures, nobles. Akakiy is, well, he's the exact opposite of all that. He's a low-level government copyist in St. Petersburg, a guy so insignificant that his coworkers barely even see him. And when they do, it's usually just to make fun of him. He is completely, utterly ordinary. And with this one character, Akaki, Gogol created this powerful new archetype, the little man. You'll see küçük insan on the slide, and that's a concept that would later become huge in Turkish literature too. This was a radical idea at the time, that the inner life of a seemingly unremarkable person, their quiet desperation, their tiny joys, their suffering, that all of that was a worthy subject for great art. Gogol was giving a voice to the voiceless, proving the ordinary could be absolutely extraordinary. Now, as you can imagine, this brand new focus on the little man immediately led to the first major interpretation of the story, one that saw it as a powerful political statement. Right away, critics jumped all over this. Thinkers like Vissarion Belinsky and N.A. Dobrolyubov saw The Overcoat as this profound work of social protest. They basically argued that through Akakiy's tragic story, Gogol was exposing the incredible cruelty and absurdity of the huge, soul-crushing Russian bureaucracy. So this reading cemented the story as a foundational text of Russian realism. It was seen as a humanistic call for empathy and a sharp critique of an oppressive system. It's really no surprise then that when Dostoevsky published his own first novel, Poor Folk, people hailed him by saying, "A new Gogol is born." They were both giving a voice to the little man. But what if that whole powerful social reading completely misses the point? I mean, decades later, a really forceful counter-argument popped up that saw the story not as a message, but as a masterpiece of pure style. And this sets up the central fight in how we read Gogol. On one side, you've got the realists who believe the message is everything. And on the other, you have the aesthetes who argue that the style is the true genius of the work. Is it about social protest, or is it a wild journey into the absurd? The champion of this second view was the writer and critic Vladimir Nabokov. And let me tell you, he did not mince words. For him, seeing The Overcoat as just a story about the plight of a poor clerk was, well, to put it simply, a shallow reading. Nabokov argued that the story isn't realism at all, not even close. For him, it's a descent into a grotesque, dreamlike, and completely irrational world created by what he called Gogol's superhuman imagination. He believed the focus shouldn't be on the social commentary, but on the bizarre language, the illogical plot twists, and the fantastic, almost nightmarish atmosphere of the whole thing. So here we are with two completely opposing interpretations. A story of social protest or a work of pure art. Who's right? Well, the real magic of Gogol is that the story is complex enough to be both. So, how did he pull this off? Well, a school of thought called Russian formalism, which focused on how a story is built, not just what it says, gives us some clues. The critic Boris Eyenbaum broke it down. First, the narrator is incredibly chatty. It's this rambling, conversational style sometimes called la façonlique. And it's just full of digressions and puns that create this bizarre, unstable tone. Second, Gogol uses what's called a grotesque composition, where he masterfully mashes together heartbreaking melodrama with slapstick comedy. It's this unique blend that creates a self-contained world with its own absurd logic, a world where it makes perfect sense for a man to live for a coat, die for it, and then come back as a ghost to haunt people. And ultimately, this complexity is the source of its power. The Overcoat influenced the realists and the modernists. It opened the door for writers everywhere, from Dostoevsky in Russia to authors in Turkey like Sabat and Ali. In fact, his famous character Raif Effendi in Madonna in a Fur Coat is a direct literary descendant of our forgotten clerk, Akaki Akakievich. Which brings us right back to the beginning. Maybe we all come out from Gogol's Overcoat because it just contains so much. It's about social injustice, sure, but it's also about obsession, the absurd nature of reality, and all the irrational moments that define us. So, I'll leave you with Nabokov's challenge. What shadows of your own existence do you find in this little story about a man and his coat?